Rachel Riley has long been a steady presence on British television, admired for her quick thinking, sharp humor, and calm authority on screen. Audiences have come to associate her with intelligence presented in a polished, professional way, the kind that feels reassuring and consistent. That's why a recent set of photos sparked such widespread attention. They didn't rely on shock or spectacle, but on something subtler: contrast. Viewers were confronted with an image of Rachel that didn't erase what they already knew, yet gently expanded it. She appeared relaxed, confident, and at ease, showing a side that felt natural but less frequently visible. For many, this wasn't about surprise in a negative sense, but about recalibration. People realized how tightly they had held onto a single version of her. The moment revealed how easily familiarity can turn into assumption, and how even small shifts in presentation can feel significant when a public figure has been mentally fixed into one role. The reaction said as much about audience expectations as it did about Rachel herself. The internet's instant amplifier. Once the images began circulating online, the response followed a familiar modern pattern. Social media transformed a quiet, personal moment into a collective discussion almost instantly. Platforms designed for speed and visibility encouraged fast reactions, hot takes, and commentary from every angle. Some users paused to appreciate the images thoughtfully, while others rushed to frame them as newsworthy, simply because they defied expectations. This rapid amplification is less about the content itself and more about the culture surrounding it. In today's digital space, anything that challenges a well-known narrative is primed to spread. Rachel's photos became shareable not because they were extreme, but because they disrupted a comfortable story people thought they understood. The internet thrives on contrast, and this moment fit perfectly into that dynamic. As posts multiplied, nuance often got lost, replaced by headlines and captions designed to provoke curiosity. The speed of the conversation made it feel larger than it was, illustrating how quickly perception can snowball online. Intelligence and self-expression can coexist. One of the strongest positive reactions came from supporters who saw the moment as a quiet statement about balance. They pushed back against the idea that intelligence and self-expression exist on opposite ends of a spectrum. For them, Rachel's images reinforce something that shouldn't need defending. People are complex. A woman can be analytical, composed, and intellectually rigorous, while also being relaxed, expressive, and comfortable in her own skin. Fans praised the ease she projected, noting that confidence doesn't always arrive loudly. It can be calm, understated, and self-assured. This response felt less like fandom and more like recognition. People saw in Rachel a reflection of their own desire to be understood as multifaceted rather than one-dimensional. The appreciation wasn't about changing her image, but about widening it. In celebrating that, supporters weren't just defending Rachel. They were challenging outdated assumptions about how public figures, especially women, are allowed to present themselves without explanation or apology. The inevitable pushback. As with most viral moments, not all reactions were supportive. Some critics questioned why the photos were receiving attention at all, suggesting the conversation was unnecessary or overblown. Others framed their discomfort as confusion, wondering why a simple shift in presentation had become a talking point. While these responses varied in tone, they shared a common thread: resistance to disruption. For some, the issue wasn't the photos themselves, but the attention surrounding them. Yet that very discomfort revealed a deeper pattern. When women step outside a familiar public role, the reaction often isn't neutral. Scrutiny follows, sometimes disguised as indifference or critique. This pushback highlighted how narrowly defined expectations can be, and how quickly deviation invites judgment. The debate wasn't really about Rachel, it was about who gets to change without commentary. The mixed responses showed how society still struggles with allowing women the same flexibility of perception routinely granted to others, especially in visible roles, media framing, and the power of headlines. Traditional media outlets soon joined the conversation, adding another layer through headlines and framing. Many chose dramatic language, not necessarily to misrepresent the moment, but to maximize clicks and engagement. In doing so, they transformed a simple set of images into a story, complete with implied tension and significance. This kind of framing can subtly shift public perception, encouraging readers to look for controversy even where none exists. The emphasis often moved away from Rachel herself and toward speculation about meaning, motive, or reaction. Media amplification tends to flatten nuance, and this case was no exception. What might have remained a fleeting online moment became a broader cultural talking point because it fit neatly into a familiar media formula. Yet beneath the attention-grabbing language, the reality remained straightforward. There was no scandal, no announcement, no reinvention. The gap between the simplicity of the moment and the intensity of its coverage highlighted how easily media narratives can inflate meaning, shaping conversations that outgrow their source. The strength of saying nothing. Perhaps the most striking aspect of the entire episode was Rachel Riley's response, or rather, her choice not to offer one. In a culture where public figures are often expected to clarify, defend, or contextualize every viral moment, her silence stood out. There were no statements, no interviews, no social media explanations. That absence felt deliberate and confident. It suggested an understanding that not every moment requires commentary, and that self-assurance doesn't depend on public approval. After years in the spotlight, Rachel likely understands the rhythm of attention and the value of letting it pass. By saying nothing, she allowed the conversation to reveal more about its participants than about her. The silence reframed the moment, shifting focus away from justification and toward acceptance. It was a subtle reminder that control doesn't always mean speaking louder. Sometimes it means trusting your own grounding enough to let others interpret, debate, and move on without your intervention. A reflection of changing audience values. This moment also points to a broader shift in how audiences relate to public figures. Increasingly, people respond to authenticity over perfection, to moments that feel unforced rather than carefully curated. Rachel's images resonated because they didn't appear staged or strategic. They felt like a genuine glimpse, not a calculated rebrand. In an era saturated with filters, branding, and constant self-presentation, that kind of natural confidence stands out. Audiences today are more attuned to when something feels real and more appreciative when it does. This doesn't mean public figures owe transparency, but it does suggest that relatability has become a form of connection. Rachel didn't present herself as an ideal or a message. She simply appeared comfortable being herself. That ease aligned with changing values around visibility and identity. People are increasingly drawn to figures who seem whole rather than perfected, and this moment fit neatly into that evolving relationship between public figures and those who watch them. Perception, not provocation. Despite the noise surrounding the photos, it's important to note what they were not. They weren't provocative, controversial, or designed to shock. The intensity of the reaction came almost entirely from perception, not from the content itself. This distinction matters. It underscores how meaning is often assigned externally, shaped by expectation rather than intent. Rachel Riley didn't change who she is or announce a new version of herself. She simply existed in a slightly different context, and that was enough to unsettle fixed ideas. The conversation that followed revealed how easily society projects narratives onto women in the public eye, reading significance into moments that are, at their core, ordinary. The episode became a mirror reflecting cultural habits around attention and interpretation. By recognizing that, the focus shifts away from judgment and toward understanding. It wasn't about pushing boundaries, it was about revealing how narrow those boundaries can be and how quickly they can be challenged without effort. Letting the moment speak for itself. In the end, the story of these photos is less about Rachel Riley and more about the space she occupies in public imagination. The attention they received showed how strongly people cling to familiar images, and how noticeable even gentle deviations can be. Rachel didn't seek to redefine herself, nor did she resist the conversation. She allowed the moment to exist on its own terms. That choice felt grounded and self-possessed, reinforcing the very confidence people noticed in the images themselves. By not engaging, she avoided turning the moment into a performance or debate. The internet moved on, as it always does, but the takeaway lingered. Expectations were questioned, assumptions exposed, and a more expansive understanding briefly entered the conversation. Rachel remained the same person viewers have known for years, just seen from a slightly different angle. Sometimes that's all it takes to remind us that people are always more than